here today. This is the Danish Microsoft Fabric user group, and we have a few rules that we would like to make sure to keep. Also, we would like to remind you of upcoming events. So I know that not very far from now, we will have on Thursday a very cool event. Please check it out on our meetup on what's coming. Also, very importantly, I want to say that this session is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded or have your questions recorded, please sign off now. The recording will be available later on our LinkedIn group. So if you're not willing to be recorded, then please don't join it. Now, also because the session is recorded, it's important that we, of course, all stay respectful and inclusive to everyone here on the call and only use respectful language. Thank you for complying. Also, we would like to get better, so we want to learn all the time. And for that reason, we ask you kindly to answer the feedback mail from Meetup on how you experience this meetup. And then I just want to introduce Javier and an introduction to Microsoft Fabric Data Analytics for the era of AI. I'm very excited to hear it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Emily, for the introduction. Let me just share my screen so we can start here. All right, I believe you can see it now, right?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Emily, for inviting me to present today to the Microsoft Fabric user group in Denmark. It's a pleasure to me to be here today, just talking about technology, talking about Microsoft Fabric, which is, as you may heard, a hot topic nowadays. Right? So the idea is just to see some of the basics on what Microsoft Fabric is, what can be accomplished with that, and also we can see some of the points in action in a demo. So the goal is by the end of the presentation, you will have an end-to-end coverage of what Microsoft Fabric is. All right? Before starting, my name is Javier Villegas. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I work as an IT director in Microsoft, in Mediterranean Shipping Company, and I am also a Microsoft MVP in the data platform area. I'm also Microsoft certifying trainer as well, and I am one of the former Azure Data Community Advisory Council. I'm also technical speaker. I try to be part of any community to talk about database technology and everything around it, particularly on the PaaS community, PaaS Summit, SQL Saturdays, etc. And I'm also one of the organizers of our local community here in Buenos Aires, SQL Argentina. We have our monthly meetings. We are going back to in person soon, hopefully. So a lot of excitement around it as well. So of course, you are welcome to join us. It is mainly in Spanish, but again, if you feel comfortable with that, definitely you are all invited. You have my contact information in the left side on the screen, LinkedIn, email, Twitter, my blog. So anything you want to discuss, any questions or anything related to this presentation, just feel free to reach me there. Or if you just only want to network with me, definitely more than welcome. So let's start. The idea is to cover this Microsoft Fabric solution, a unified analytics solution of the era of AI, right? So pretty cool, actually. So let's try then to see why Microsoft is calling analytics solution for the era of AI. You know, nowadays you see ChatGPT everywhere. You see Copilot in most of the Microsoft products and solutions. So definitely we will also see it in Fabric as well. So first of all, Microsoft Fabric was announced as a public preview a year ago, exactly during the last Microsoft Build, right, 2023. And then during Ignite in November, it was announced as general availability, right? So it's a pretty, let's say, new solution, right? But definitely it's not a static solution that is there, period, and it is mature. No, it's growing, it's growing, it's growing every month. There are a lot of new features coming into it. Microsoft has a dedicated web page with the roadmap, announcing the roadmap, announcing what is coming ahead, and definitely so exciting. During the Microsoft Ignite presentation, which I had the pleasure to be there in the keynote, Arun was presenting and giving all the insights on Fabric, and one of the phrases that definitely were so important to start the conversation is this one in the slide. Data is the fuel that powers AI. I cannot agree more. And definitely, as long as we move on with the presentation, the idea is also to try to, understand a little bit what this means. So, what is Fabric? Right? First of all, it's an end-to-end analytic platform that is targeted to multiple approaches on your data project, right? And there are multiple components part of Microsoft Fabric. One of the comparisons that I always like to make here is that everybody knows in the productivity area, Microsoft Office, Microsoft 365, right? In where you have multiple products, right? Word, Excel, Outlook, which are part of the same umbrella that is now Microsoft Office, and they work all together on this common storage layer called OneDrive, right? So solutions that were there before, eventually, or maybe long time ago, you were even able to buy them separately, consume them separately, but now they are all under this productivity solution called Office, right? Well, for data analytics, this is what Microsoft Fabric is, right? It's basically a set of existing solutions, right? Which are Synapse Analytics, Azure Data Factory, and Power BI, right? Under the same data analytics umbrella called Fabric, right? Definitely, it's not the same that the original Synapse. It's not the same that what we were doing with Azure Data Factory, and definitely not in Power BI, right? And there are many other components showing it into this family, right? What is also super important to mention here is that now, same as Office with OneDrive, right? Now Fabric has this common storage layer called OneLake, right? In where, for the very first time, Microsoft has adapted an open standard of Delta Parquet, right? Initially, with the original Synapse solution, it was a proprietary storage format, so only property of Microsoft. Now is jumping into an open standard of Delta Parquet. So all the components that we have at the top of Fabric will be using and relying on OneLake, which again is now an open format. Being able to adapt an open format is not only a great thing just because it's open, but also because allows you to interact way easier with other solutions in the market, right? You know that in the data area, you may be starting a project that you may have some of the data in one cloud provider, some of the other data in a different provider, some data on premise, right? And some other in Azure, right? So being able to work and talk using open standard is definitely a super important thing, right? So we have all these components, right? As we described, which are now part of this Fabric umbrella, right? Data Factory, we were using it before, or we're actually still using it because, you know, Synapse, Data Factory, and Power BI, you can still use, let's say, the existing solution. But if you want to start a new project, something related to data engineering, data warehousing, data science, you can, you know, still go and use this product. But nowadays, or before Fabric, let's say, it was quite difficult to wire all these components, right? In terms of networking, in terms of sizing, and also in terms of billing. Now that they are all under the same umbrella, it's way easier to integrate in any kind of data analytics solution, right? So we have all these areas, which, as I said, relies on the unified data foundation, which is one lake, right? So you can have your project, your data warehouse projects on one lake, and then eventually you can share the data with other components within Fabric. A nice concept within Fabric is, you know, what we've been seeing before in any kind of analytic solution is that when you need to do a project, you have to copy the data. You have to copy, let's say, or duplicate the data that you have as an initial data set for, you know, data science or for the data warehousing. With the concept of one lake and a single copy of the data, right, we can create what is known as shortcuts, and you can reach, you know, you can share to any other workspace. We will see what the workspace is later on, right? We can just create the shortcut so, you know, within the other project, they can access to the data that we have, and we don't need to duplicate the data and maintain and govern the data twice. So being able to have a single copy of the data is definitely one of the key things within Fabric. So with that, we can ingest the data with the pipelines, which is part of Data Factory, right? We can insert it into a lakehouse or data warehouse, storage there, and then with this shortcut, we can distribute it within other projects in our solution. What is super important to mention and to understand is that Fabric is a SaaS solution, meaning software as a service. You can start just, you know, connecting to the Fabric portal, you know, getting into the trial, and you have everything you need in there. You have all these possible approach, meaning data warehouses, data science, data engineering. You can do Power BI, everything. You have this layer in between that is compute, right? If you want to do a data science or data engineering process, maybe you feel better with the Spark, right? And you can create your Spark notebook and work with the Spark on it. If you are working on a traditional data warehouse, right, you will use T-SQL, right? You also have semantics models, so analysis services, compute is also part of this. And for real-time analytic, QStock or QQL is also member. So you can instance any of these compute layer for your project, and they're all available for you in this serverless / software as a service fashion, meaning that, which is the part that I like the most, is that you don't need to install anything in your computer, right? If you want to start a brand new project related to data analytics, you have everything in there. You can start right now. You just need your data, of course, in a source. It could be Parquet file. It could be a relational database, SQL, Oracle, MySQL. It could be data stored in a different cloud, right? We will see that in a minute as well. And you can create your project, right? Work with your project. And also, eventually, you can do a proof of concept without buying any hardware, right? Without buying any software, installing and building the infrastructure for that, because all this is software as a service. That is the beauty of this solution. You don't have to spin up everything. You have all you need in there, right? And as I said, the one layer which allows you to store everything in the open format, right? There is also this layer called One Security, in where we will see that we can govern everything related to permissions for the whole Fabric solution quite simply. So, as I briefly mentioned before, within Fabric, we have this concept of shortcuts and concept of workspace. Let's say we are all in the same company and the human resource area need to work on a traditional data warehouse to come up with certain analysis. But within the same company, we have the data engineers, right, that need to get an extensive data set to train and run machine learning models at the top of it to train your data and come up with a result, right? Let's say that part of this data is common for both projects. So you have the HR area working with one workspace in where they're going to have all the resources, right? And then we have the data science with another workspace. And quite easily, we can, maintain the data in one of these workspaces and share it with the other with this shortcut, right? So it's super, super easy. What is also quite interesting and quite attractive on this concept of shortcuts, not, don't having to duplicate your data, is that maybe you have your source data in an Amazon S3 or in Google Cloud, right? Before we had to, get that data, copy the data, and have it and working it in our, data analytics solution. Now we can even create shortcuts from AWS and from GCP, and we see the data resides remotely on the original cloud, but we see and we can work with that data in our, Fabric solution, right? So we can combine in a traditional data warehouse data that we have running operationally in AWS, in a SQL Server on-prem, for example, or in a, Cosmos DB in Azure, all in one solution without having to duplicate the data, right? Creating all these shortcuts. So super, super interesting. So what do you need in order to work with Fabric? Well, when you first log in, you will see a quite familiar environment. What is that? I mentioned that Power BI is part of Fabric. So Microsoft have using this benefit of having all this knowledge around Power BI and rely on the similar portal. So in the similar portal, I'm saying similar because for Power BI is the same as the one we used to know, right? And also, again, this concept of working with workspaces is coming from Power BI. But also you will see that within Fabric, you can switch between what Microsoft called personas. or experience, right? So you are logged into the Fabric portal, right? And you can switch your profile. It's like, just switching your hats: data engineer, data science, data warehouse, and real-time analytics. Something that I haven't mentioned much is that you can also create your analytical projects, getting data from real-time, sensors, event hubs, streaming of data, right? And you can work with that as well. So you have all this experience. One of them is Power BI, which is quite similar to the one that we've been using so far, but with some steroids, right? We will try to describe them later on. We also have Data Factory that we will use it to ingest the data into Fabric, doing ETLs or ELTs directly into Fabric, right? And then we have these 4 experience for data engineering, data warehouse, data science, and real-time analytics. Microsoft is also working in adding into Fabric additional experiences to make Fabric your, let's say, environment, not only for data analytics, but for other areas related to data, right? So super, super nice.
Javier, I see we have a question in the chat.
Yes.
It says, the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 has Dataverse. Will there be any convergence with Microsoft Fabric, or are their products too much distinct from each other or to each other?
Okay, it's a great question. If you are using Dynamics or you have Office 365, definitely you rely on Dataverse, right? You can require this data to be part of your analytical solution. If you need to do that, you don't need to copy the data into Fabric. There is a dedicated shortcut, right, to get the data from Dataverse into Fabric. Right now, I don't remember if it is GA or if it is in public preview. I know that within our company we are using it, right? So yes, it's the same shortcut that having your data in Google or AWS, right? But internally for Dataverse. So the answer is yes. You have the possibility to create the shortcut to Dataverse without duplicating your original data into Fabric.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, now that we are getting closer and we know a little bit more about what Fabric is, I always like to mention, have this slide in my presentation because, we may come from different worlds, ones that are coming more from a traditional data warehouse that maybe nowadays we are using a SQL Server or an Azure SQL, or we're coming from SQL DW or these kind of things. And definitely these are persons profile that work with relational data, right? And they use mainly T-SQL to work on it, right? But also, we have the other folks that are coming from the data engineering, data science area, which relies more on a lakehouse. And here we have the main differences, right? On, the type of data that we can work in one or the other is, warehouse. We can work with a structured table, right? Tables, columns, relationships, right? Like SQL. On the other hand, in a lakehouse, we can rely on unstructured, semi-structured, or structured data. So we can also have tables, but we can also have files. We can have JSON files. We can have images. So any kind of data can be used there, right? as I mentioned, for the warehouse, the primary skill set will be SQL, right, and T-SQL. And for the lakehouse, it's going to be Spark with Scala, PySpark, R, or Spark SQL, right? Mainly what we need to be comfortable with in order to work properly, right? So definitely these are the main difference on how, the kind of data that we will work with, right, and the skill set, right? So that is why I always want to stop a few seconds to share this slide, right? If we go to what Microsoft call, as I said, experiences or personas, I also heard the term happy path, right? We can, switch between one to the other very easily, right? We will see it later on in the demo, right? But if you're going to start with a data engineer or data warehouse solution, we have to use these components, right? Data Factory, of course, to ingest the data into Fabric, right? And then the experiences of Synapse, data engineering, and data warehousing, right? So these are some of the features that are available nowadays, and we can, again, there is a dedicated page for roadmap with new things coming at the top of it. I just want to briefly mention this one for data engineering, right? For the very first time here, we see the word Copilot, right? Which is still not available as a general available, but it is in preview, right? With this concept of, Copilot is like personal assistant, right? So we will focus in this presentation on the Copilot for Power BI. Actually, I have a small video that I would like you to see. But, even in all the experiences that we have, right, we may have Copilot. Let's say we need to create a pipeline and we don't know the structure of the data source. Well, Copilot will be there to help us to do the discovery and also to write the pipeline to get that data into. You work with a semantic model and you need to work with DAX to write your queries over there. Well, if you have any doubt related to DAX or how to do this or that in a more efficient way, you can work with Copilot within Fabric to come up with. Then I have a slide which is dedicated on all the areas in where we will see Copilot, right? Here in the warehousing, as I mentioned, cross-cloud, cross-database, right? So super, super interesting. For the real-time analytics, again, we have everything that was Stream Analytics or Event Hub, in where maybe we have a farm of sensors just sending data, or the temperature changes for a specific farm, right? We can get them there into Fabric using something similar that we were using before, right? But more integrated into the Fabric solution, so we can do analytics with those real-time data coming into our solution, right? So the ones that are coming from this area will definitely be super comfortable with the experience in Fabric, right? And then Power BI, right? On every analytic solution, we need the last layer, which is to present the data to the final users, power user, business users, right? Management. So we know what Power BI is. We know what we can accomplish with Power BI. So definitely after we ingest the data, we work with the data, we need to present it with dashboards and reports, right? And one of the interesting benefits of Power BI now in Fabric is that, let's say that the ones that are working with Power BI Desktop and building the reports, they are familiar with these two concepts, right? Direct query mode or import mode in Power BI, right? Direct query mode is that when, within your report, you just go to the source to run the query, right? To get the data that you need, right? And then there is import mode, in where you get some snapshot of the data into Power BI, and then you do the queries at the top of it, right? Each of them has pros and cons. If you use direct query mode, you will get the latest and greatest data into your report. But the downside is that it's slow, right? Import mode, at the other hand, is faster, right? Because you have all the data in a snapshot into your report, but you are not always using the latest data, right? Now in Fabric, in Power BI, you have a third mode, which is called Direct Lake mode, which basically combines those two things: the performance of direct query and the performance of import mode with the possibility of grabbing the latest and greatest up-to-date data coming from it, right? So really, really good. There is a new member of the family, which is called Data Activator. You will see that there is this experience within Fabric as well. So what is Data Activator and what it has to do with Fabric and an analytical solution? Well, if you choose the experience Data Activator, you will find yourself in a no-code, low-code experience in Fabric that basically will allow you to sensor the data that is getting into Fabric or into your Data Activator project, right? Create some processing and rules, right? And then take actions. What is this, or why would you use Data Activator? Let's say that you have your data sources, which could be a real-time analytics, so data coming from sensors, and every 10 seconds we get data with temperature, right? So we're just getting this data into Fabric, right? So we want to create a rule to detect, for example, if the temperature, if those values that are getting into Fabric, are outside of a range for a certain amount of time. So let's say that we get, okay, the maximum temperature could be up to 20 degrees Celsius, and for 5 consecutive cents, we get 22, right? So we're gonna raise a trigger, and with that trigger, we can take action. That actions could be send a team message, right? Send an email through Outlook, do any custom action like running a PowerShell, or just jumping into Power Automate and take some, run some process over there, right? So we can work not only with real-time data coming from sensor, we can also have a data set, right, to analyze it, and then with this no-code, low-code experience, we work on it, creating these rules, any kind of business rules that we need, right? And we take these actions. With that, I mean, what I like to emphasize on this is that we don't need the person to be just checking the Power BI report with real-time data to see if we have some sort of anomaly, right? We can have Data Activator doing it for us and raising these actions in case we need it. So definitely super, super interesting, this concept of Data Activator, right? It's available within Fabric, so definitely for you to use it as well, right? So as I mentioned about Copilot, there are multiple areas in where we can use it within our warehouse to help us to write the code within the data engineering area, where it can help us on working with our notebooks and writing Spark. I mentioned already the part for DAX, and also there is for Power BI, right? So Now in preview, these are all the areas in where, ourselves, we will be able to, have a conversation with Copilot in Fabric in a human language, right? And we're gonna get help to write the Power BI report, get insight of those reports. We will see it in action there, generate DAX, work with SQL, data factory, machine learning models, and so on and so forth, right? So definitely, the Copilot experience within Fabric will definitely help us to be more proactive on, building our data analytics solution of any kind. Mm-hmm. All right, so we mentioned pipeline, we mentioned data factory, right? In where we can, just go to our relational database and get the data into Fabric with an ETL, with a pipeline, right? So, what we can do with this? Okay, we can schedule our ETL to get the data from our operational SQL server, for example, every 6 hours. So we get this data, we park it into Fabric, and then we do the warehousing and we come up with the reports, right? This concept of mirroring, right, will help us to skip the pipeline, skip the data factory part, right? Connect directly to the source, to the operational source, right? And if there is a new insert, update, delete on the source data, we will see that data reflected into OneLake automatically, right? So let's say we have our ERP software running in Azure SQL database. So we have, the invoicing teams just creating, invoices. So when they go to the Linux Business application and they create a new invoice, right, it's gonna save into a relational table in SQL, right? So instead of waiting for the next ETL to run in an hour, 6 hours, or tomorrow, that data that we'll see in the table will get synchronized, replicated into OneLake right away. And with that, we can work in our analytical process with real-time data, right? So Microsoft has announced it, right, mirroring at this point for these 4 sources: Cosmos DB, Azure SQL Database, Snowflake, and MongoDB. So as you can see here, there is not only Microsoft sources, there are multiple other sources from third-party vendors. Excuse me. Any questions till here?
No, I think you've explained it so well. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat.
Okay.
But please,
Great.
Everybody out there, if you have questions, we're seeing one come in here.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, Microsoft got PureView to govern data. Any patterns or best practices to use PureView with MDM, Master Data Management, and Microsoft Fabric? Oh, great question.
Yes, PureView is definitely the governance and lineage component of Fabric. Even if it is not part of Fabric, it's definitely what Microsoft has as security and lineage for not only for Fabric, but also for other components. So in terms of, let's say, MDM, as I see here, definitely you have those practices, those best practices, those patterns already created actually there are templates in PureView, right? And definitely you can apply them there in Fabric directly into your warehouse or your lakehouse, right? And you can enforce from there. You can also generate this kind of security layer at the top of Fabric, which in the future will be integrated with this concept of one security that I mentioned before. All right. So
thank you.
Sure. Okay, so now I would like everybody to pay attention to this short video before we go to the demo, in where we will see the next generation of AI with Copilot in Power BI. I'm thrilled to show this because I still cannot believe what can we accomplish now. So let's see this video.
Is it supposed to have sound on? I'm not hearing anything.
All right, so you see that now we have Copilot fully integrated into Power BI. We can not only use it to write our reports, we can also use it to ask questions of a specific visual, a specific report in natural language and get insight from that, right? It's like making your report to talk to you directly, right? So this is definitely something that nowadays is available in preview, right? So you can start doing this right now. So definitely, I encourage you to go check it because it's something amazing, right? You can talk with Power BI to get insight of your own data, right? So super, super cool. All right, so I have a brief demo, right? That how we can get into Fabric, how we can start, and then I will go through some resources that I have to share with all of you. So let me switch to my virtual machine in where I'm connected to my portal, right? As you can see, the URL is still the same as before, app.powerbi.com. But we can also use app.fabric.microsoft.com, right? In order to start with, you can sign in here and get a 60 days trial in order for you to work and test and do your POC and get familiarized with the solution. So, you don't have to pay anything and you can start doing all this, right? Down here, we have this concept of, personas or areas in where we can switch and use. We see Power BI, which is the one that we are at right now, Data Factory, Data Activator, and then what we saw before related to Synapse, Data Engineer, Data Science, Data Warehouse, or Real-Time Analytics, right? So I will switch now to the experience of Data Warehouse, right? And then I will start with, let's say I want to organize my POC to create a warehouse and to work with it. And in order to get organized, I will start with workspaces. I will put all my resources related to this POC that I'm trying to conduct into here, and then eventually, if we need it, we can delete all this in one shot. This is also interesting to organize our resources, not only for performance and to be organized, but also for billing, right? For billing, having this is also super good. So we just go here, create a new workspace, right? So let's gonna call it Data Denmark. Is available. We have to go here in advanced, and we have to select which kind of license mode we will use, right? We can own a Fabric capacity, right? Or we can still use the trial, which is the one that I will be using right now. So I'm just creating my workspace, and what I have here so far is an empty workspace to start working with. So then here we have new, right? And this is what we can start working with right away. So in order to start with my data warehouse, what I will be creating here right now is a warehouse, right? So I will call it DW Denmark. Okay. So what I have here, what I'm doing is creating an empty data warehouse. You see, I didn't have to install any SQL or any tooling or create database. No. In this SaaS environment, we have our warehouse in here. In order to move on, let's say that maybe I may combine data that I get into my data warehouse, but I also may need a lake house, right? So I will go back to my workspace. You will see that automatically I have now my data warehouse, right? And at the top of it, it just creates a semantic model that can be used for reporting later on, but I can just go here, new, and create a lakehouse, right? So I will call my lakehouse Denmark. And again, in a matter of seconds, I have my lakehouse created. It is interesting because from here, right, we can directly open a notebook and start working an instance, a Spark component to start working with PySpark, for example, with the data that I have. In this moment, I still have no data because I create an empty lakehouse and an empty data warehouse, right? I have here everything, right? Okay, so let's get data into our data warehouse, for example. So I will go here to new data pipeline, right? And this is how we're gonna get data into our environment. I will name it pipeline 1. And here we're gonna come up with experience that we will feel familiar because it's quite similar to Data Factory, right? So let's go with this copy data assistant. With that, we just need to select the source. We do any mapping if we need to do something, and then the destination. So in order to start, we have several data sources. Some of them are sample data, COVID, New York taxes, public holidays, right? And then if we go further, we see all these data sources. And as you can see, we have not only SQL Server or Azure SQL, but we also have Dynamics. We also have blob storage, so we can have Parquet files or CSV files in a blob storage, and we can use it. We have Cosmos DB, right? But we also have Dataverse here, Amazon S3, so we can have the data park in there. DB2 database, this is quite new. Actually, probably the first time I see it. MongoDB, right? Postgres, Oracle, right? So quite interesting. In order to start with, I will get data from New York Taxi. Right? So I will select New York Taxi. It's going to preview the data that we have there, right? This is a quite simple example in where, we just have this data that is publicly available and we ingest it into our data warehouse, all right? So the idea will be to connect to this source, right? It is now previewing the data and then ingest it into our solution. Sure why stay. Okay, here we go. So we hit next. Now we have to choose the destination, right? And for the destination, I will choose warehouse, right? Where is warehouse here? Warehouse, right? So in the warehouse, we have the possibility of choose the one that we already have, right? DW Denmark. So then we have this simple question, right? We're gonna load it into an existing table if we already have those tables, or we create a new table. This is what we're gonna do. I will create a new table called from the schema DBO and the table NYCTLC. I can choose any name here, right? And now what it's doing is reading the source to give us the mapping. So here we can exclude some of the columns if we need. We can change the data type, or we can also modify the column names, right? Once we are ready, we just hit next. For Max. Marker Max doesn't support. So it's gonna remove some. Remove this one. Let's remove. Yeah, I normally add it into the lakehouse. So yeah. Okay, so once we are there, we just come up with our pipeline, right? And we have this data there, and similar to what we know in Data Factory, is gonna save the pipeline, so then we can reuse it. We can schedule to run it every 1 hour or whatever we need, and then it will run it, and we will have here the execution. If we go here, we can also see the progress of the pipeline. It will tell us how many rows it's been copying, the duration, and everything. So, and now that is in progress, right? So what it's doing right now is getting this data into the data warehouse, right? It's going to finish in few seconds. We should also see somewhere here more about the duration. Yeah, here breaking out in queue and transfer. So let's leave it there and let's switch to something else. Let's say that we also have CSV files that we want to upload into our lakehouse. So we're gonna go here, and we need those files in order to do some comparison with the data that we go into the warehouse or for something else that our project needs. So as we said, this one is completely empty, right? So we have here the section for files, and then in files we can do upload, right? And we're gonna upload files. So we come up with this wizard here in where we have to select the files. Here I have a bunch of CSV files, right? I will go and check this one, business operations survey. So I'm just selecting this one, and just hit upload. And now I'm uploading a CSV file that is on my local machine, right, into Fabric, and we will have it as file. So we have the file here. So if we go and we hit refresh, we will see the file. Here we see the file, right? So let's say that we want to create this as a table into our lakehouse. So load to table, new table. Now it's complaining about the characters on my table name. So I will remove some. Right? In the meantime, the pipeline number 1 just finished. We can say that the first column had the column headers and the separator is comma. Then we hit load, and what we see here in few seconds is this CSV file being transformed and parked into our lakehouse. All right. So now it's loading. It's just finished. I see my table, right? So now as a table, and we have a preview of the data. And from here, we can, just create our notebook, and we can start working with Spark, Scala, R, Spark SQL on the data that we just got it, right? So definitely, I just added one simple table, but we can do anything we want. And if we go back to the data warehouse, right? Now we will see that I have the table NYCTLC, right? We also gonna have the preview in here, right? And then we can just do new query, and we have a T-SQL editor here. Select start from dbo.nyctl. Let's do a top 10. All right. So again, without moving away from my Fabric portal, right, I was able to load data from a sample data source, the New York Taxi, into my data warehouse, and upload files that I have in my local machine into the lakehouse to do any kind of analysis. So to me, this is really super, super powerful. All right. If you come from, let's say, your school and you don't feel comfortable working within the portal here, there is a tool that I like a lot, which is SQL Server Management Studio. So you can tell me what can we do with Management Studio and Fabric. All right, so if we go to the warehouse, we have the settings here, right? And we have here what is called SQL connection string, right? This string can be used to connect from any other application, Power BI or your third-party application, right? So you have the connection string here. So I will copy here into my clipboard, right? I will go back to Management Studio. I will go hit Connect Database Engine. I will paste here the URL, right? And I have to choose, let me just put the proper username that I have here. I hit Connect, all right? It's gonna just ask me to double check to sign in. We close, and now here is connecting. And what you will see is that from within Management Studio, we're gonna be connecting not only to the data warehouse, also to the lakehouse. And eventually we can use Transact SQL, right, to do joins between the components, the tables within the lakehouse and the data warehouse. So I have in the data warehouse table, here I have the New York taxi, and in the lakehouse, here I have the CSV file converted into a table, right? So super, super powerful. We can do this cross-database experience, so we can join data from here into here. We can create a store procedure within our data warehouse and then call it on any kind. So really, really powerful, right? All right, so we got a sense of what can be achieved. First of all, what Microsoft Fabric is, right? What are some of the things that we can do, how we can start with. And now the idea is just to go through several resources that we have available for us to learn, right? You know, Microsoft is doing a lot of push to the whole community, right, to start getting on board into Fabric. So there is a ton of resources available for everybody to start learning, right? There are ebooks, there are these free trials, there is the community hub, there are videos, tutorials, and there is also even a certification available to do that, right? The ExamDP 600, right? Here, Microsoft came up with this Cloud Skill Challenge, right? Which basically allow you to go through the Learn portal and do all the challenging, where you will see what a lakehouse is, what a warehouse is. You will have some hands-on labs to do. You can work with Notebook, you can work with the T-SQL, you can also do semantic model. So it's gonna be, you know, end-to-end in 13 modules, even that activator, right? You complete it, and if you finish, or when you finish, right, you're gonna be eligible for a 50% discount for the exam, right? Recently, Microsoft also had this initiative called Learn Live Together, in where there are 9 videos or 9 episodes series, which are actually that were delivered by MVPs, right, in different languages and in different time zones, and also there are recorded in YouTube, so you can go check them, right? And you have the concept, the content of this Learn Live, skill challenge, cloud skill challenge in videos, so explain module by module by a community expert. Here are the 9 modules. This is the example of the agenda for the wave 1. We just finished the wave 2 that was delivered in Spanish and in English, right? So if you go to YouTube, or if you go to Microsoft Learn and check for Learn Live Together Microsoft Fabric, you will have a ton of material, videos. There are a quiz, there are knowledge checks, there are demos, right? So super, super powerful. And there is also one specific episode, which is not listed here, which is providing you tips on how to pass the exam DP 600. So super useful. Another important link for you to consider is the Fabric Career Hub, in where you will see everything related to real cases from companies, from community, from expert, right? You will see use cases, you will see interviews, material. So definitely a must-go repository related to Fabric, right? So a lot of information in this Fabric Career Hub. You have the link at the top of it, right? And, everything related to the certification itself, how to prepare, first of all, how to learn, how to get involved, right, with the Cloud Skill Challenge, with the Learn Together, the exam crowd session. Then there are practice tests, so you can go in a specific website and do, a 50-question exam, demo exam, which is quite interesting actually. And then at the end of the process, you just go and schedule the exam, right? Here is the link directly to the skill challenge. So we have gone from 0 to knowing, what Fabric is. So if you want to start with, definitely aka.ms/upgrade to Fabric is the way to go. And with that, we just finish all this quick 1-hour journey in Fabric. So again, you have my contact information there. Anything that you want, anything you need related to this presentation, definitely feel free to reach me out. Okay. Emily, do we have questions?
So I see there are now one question here from Misea. How far away do you see Fabric from being a production-ready enterprise solution? I hear a lot of POCs in the community. Good question.
No, nowadays is definitely something that is ready for go to production. Actually, in my company, we are switching from projects in where we were using Data Factory and Synapse to Fabric. There are a bunch of folks getting on board, right? It's GA, so if it is generally available, Microsoft will give you the support, the SLA, and everything you need around it. So in my opinion, it's definitely ready for any enterprise-ready data analytics solution.
Thank you. And I see also many thank yous out here, and I see Misea is writing a comment more. Let's just give it one moment. Do you have any advice for going on to this? And she also asked, what about it from a cost perspective?
Well, from cost perspective, again, it will depend a lot on the kind of activity that you need to do, the kind of project that you need to do, right? Microsoft, after these 60-day trials, they have this concept of, which is similar to what we have in Power BI actually, which is capacity, right? In where there are capacities that now they are not more the P capacity and now are the F capacity, and Microsoft is actually replacing the original Power BI P capacity to the F capacity. So they go from 1 to from F1 to F 2048, in where each of the capacity has different amount of computing resources, in some cases features that you can use in one capacity that you cannot use in the other, right? And each capacity, of course, is more expensive than the other because you will have more computing power, more features, etc., etc. So in terms of cost, is something that, my opinion, you should, this is actually not only my opinion, it's what Microsoft is advising, is go, take the trial, get involved into not only the operational part, which is what we saw, also take care of the administrative part, right? There is one of the Learn module, which is purely exclusively on administration, to see what happened behind the scene, how to measure the resource usage, how to scale up, scale down, how to pause, etc., right? And definitely something that you cannot start with the biggest one because maybe you're not going to be using it at all, or maybe yes, or it will depend, right? In terms of cost, there are multiple options, right? If it is cheap, if it is expensive, that will depend, right? The always come and depends answer, right? But definitely it's something for you to have it as a unified data analytic solution from end to end. If today you have to use third-party components or different things and get built from different components to build one solution, nowadays you have it in one solution, which is Microsoft Fabric.
Thank you. I have one more question here from Harry. What are the operations features for Fabric, like admin controls, resource monitors, logging, software updates, page triggers, billing, scripted setup, etc.?
Yeah, well, you have different concepts within Fabric. We saw some of them, right? But there are many more. The first component is tenant. Tenant is the umbrella for your company. So let's say you have within your company, there is one tenant, period. Then within the tenant, you have the concept of capacity, right? Which is this amount of resources that you allocate for your Fabric solution. You can have one or more, right? Then after you can buy, for example, several or 5 F2 or 5 or F64, right? And you allocate those compute resources for different areas of your company or different projects, or you can also have one big capacity for everybody. Then after that, you have workspace, something that we just saw before, right? And then objects, which is the layout, the warehouse, etc. With that, you have the granularity for each of them. You have tenant administrator, tenant operator, and tenant read. The same for capacity, the same for workspace, and the same for the objects, right? So there are a lot of granularity for each of the component of every Fabric solution.
Thank you. One very last question, and then I think we've covered a lot in this session. Marcia says that we've seen a 10x in price from Dataflow Gen 1 to Gen 2. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, Dataflow Gen 1, Gen 2 are definitely components of our overall solution, right? In Dataflow Gen 1, that can be used only to work within your Power BI environment. You can work with your semantic model, and you can get this import mode process, etc. Gen 2 are definitely way more powerful because you can also get data from different sources, way more different sources than Gen 1, right? You can do transformation and you can use it as part of a solution that definitely will cover more. In Gen 1, definitely they were used for a piece of your data analytic project. But what about the lakehouse before? Or, I mean, you were covering the ingestion with that, right? But what about the rest? Now, Gen 2 is part of Fabric, and you don't have to pay for, a usage or one specific artifact or one specific Gen 2, right? I heard comments about that is expensive and also it's not that expensive, but that's depending on the usage, right? So again, my advice is the same. Jump into it, test it, try, see your use case. Microsoft, as I mentioned multiple times, is definitely pushing so you can engage resources from Microsoft to help you build the right solution for your data analytics. And hopefully you can also get the billing well defined.
Thank you, Javier.
Sure.
It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot.
Likewise, definitely I enjoy a lot presenting here today. And well, definitely looking forward for in the future continue being part of this presentation. I love to be here. Thank you, Emily, for having me. So I see there is a question. Yeah, is it?
I don't see any enterprise-ready features for operations. Buying capacity units does not mean you get any operations features.
Well, my comment here is yet.
And of course, its month is May. We're gonna have build. There is a high likelihood.
There are a lot of announcements in the pipeline, and Harry, you mentioned operations. Stay tuned. is the only thing I can say. What I like to emphasize is that during my presentation, I always mention data analytics, right, which is not data operations, right? The intention from Microsoft in the short future is remove analytics and just do the unified data solution, right? So stay tuned for that. Definitely join these community events, right? A lot of things coming around Microsoft Fabric, right? Not only in the analytical space, but also in the operational space as well.
I agree. It's going to get exciting. This was an exciting session. Thank you so much, Javier. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye.